الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Hadith number 12 is a hadith that is very simple words but has great meanings, as all of the different hadith, of course, especially with the 40 hadith of Imam Nawawi, since they are all hadith that are principles in the deen, foundation of the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And each hadith is really a way of life. It's something that if we listen to it carefully and if we try to apply it, you would find yourself in need of these hadith on a daily basis, constantly, because it's something that is common in all of our actions. So that's why it has to be revisited. We have to be reminded of it. We have to make sure that we're patiently applying these hadith till it becomes the norm of our life. That's how a human being changes. People don't change overnight. When a person wants to adopt a certain manner, if a person is greedy, for example, and he wants to be generous, it's not going to happen overnight. What that person should be doing is that he has to give charity, he has to be generous against his own desire, he has to force himself, and he would do this a lot. On a daily basis, every day he gives something for the sake of Allah. And he doesn't like it, but he does. So after some time, then it becomes his norm. And the same thing in anything in our life. A person get a new job, he hates it in the beginning. He hates the fact that he has to get up in the morning, for example, early or whatever. But because of it's a good job, it pays good, whatever, he'll be patient. And one day after another, it becomes his norm. And he doesn't find any problem in getting up early and working many hours, things like this. So the same thing with good deeds, with manners, with ibadah, with everything in our life. And part of that is the importance of these hadith, is that we have to keep on reviewing them to make sure that we're applying them in our hearts and our speech and our actions on a daily basis, and to be patient so that it becomes the norm of our life. So this hadith is one of them, and I read, as you see the hadith here on the screen. This is hadith and the sharh, the explanation of it by Sheikh Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah. We just take the hadith on the top here, and you say after me, inshallah, if you would like. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من حسن إسلام المرء تركه ما لا يعني. من حسن إسلام المرء تركه ما لا يعني. Says حديث حسن رواه الترمذي وغيره هكذا. So as you see, the hadith is few words. من حسن إسلام المرء تركه ما لا يعني, which roughly means from the goodness, husn is goodness, from the goodness of one's Islam, of a person's Islam, al-mar' is a human being, tarkuhu, that he leaves, ma la ya'ni, what does not concern him. So what does that mean? More details. It shows first that people, they have levels in their Islam, meaning people are not in the same level. Some people, their Islam is good, meaning their actions upon the deen is good. And some people, there are deficiencies in their actions. So their deen, their Islam is not as perfect as others, which shows that we have to make sure that we elevate ourselves, and we have to constantly work on our deen so that we perfect it. And perfecting it, it's against being a human being, because we're deficient by nature as human beings. We fall into mistakes and things like this. But what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us, as mentioned before in the hadith of an-nasiha, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us is that in our hearts, we want to perfect our actions. We want to be perfect. We have to fulfill the rights in our life in the perfect way. This is in our hearts, and we have to be truthful about this. Then we have weaknesses physically. For example, a person is not able to do something, of course, that person is excused. Weaknesses, even sins, if a person falls into a sin, he repents to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and constantly working on ourselves, reforming ourselves, elevating ourselves, purifying ourselves, so that our Islam, our submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will become in perfect sense. And that's the word min husni Islam al-mar. Whether it's referring to the deen of Islam, that for a person to have, to be strong upon his deen, and also gives the meaning of the word Islam itself, like from the goodness of one's submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like if you submit, because that's what Islam is, that you submit yourself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala willingly to the orders of Allah. And people are in levels in this too. And it's part of the covenant of al-Iman. When a person says La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, that's a covenant, that's a contract. That means he is basically going to worship none but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, and he's going to follow the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And therefore, we have to listen and to obey and to follow the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and not to pick and choose. Otherwise, it's not really religion. If a person would just choose whatever he thinks is easy and he leaves whatever he thinks is difficult, that's not religion, that's desires. That's, people are following their desires in this case. But to be a abd, to be a slave to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the real sense, is that the person, he says, I listen and I obey. His concern is to know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. And the beauty of the deen of Islam is that there's no manipulation from human beings. As many other nations or religions, they turn away or they turned off from their religion because there's manipulation by the people in charge or the religious people, because religion is based on what the religious leaders are upon. In Islam, this is not the case. We have this deen has been saved for us. So when a person says, I listen and I obey, it's to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And that's why we have these clear verses in the Quran and the Hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And that's what we need to submit ourselves to. And of course, when it comes to the people of knowledge, we ask them. We ask them, and the knowledge is to show us what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, what the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, to explain that to us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered us to ask the people of knowledge, of course. And that's part of learning the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is to perfect that submission to Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So yes, a person should take things gradual. But for example, someone is a Muslim and he got to know that, someone, for example, we can have extreme examples. Someone that his livelihood matters is from selling drugs, for example, and he made a fortune out of it. And then he became a Muslim and he realized that this is haram. Submitting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's something that he has to be upon, is to say, I listen and I obey. Shaitan will come whispering, but you're going to lose your money. How are you going to earn money? You have so much money now. Things like this. He has to rely on Allah and to trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that forbade that on him. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will provide for him. This can be a very clear example, of course, but this is how sins are. It doesn't have to be something that we all agree that this is an evil thing because the laws of the lands, they make it illegal. There are things that you would find people are doing and they're fine with it, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbade it. So this is what matters to a Muslim. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbade for us to drink intoxications, and this is the norm in the society that the person is in, what should that person do? He should say, I listen and I obey. But he used to drink. This is used to be his norm of his life. Then he needs to submit himself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with being pleased with the orders of Allah. That this is what is best for him, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one that created us, He's the only one that has the right to forbid things or to make permissible things and so on. Salah time. Fajr Salah is at 3 o'clock in the morning. So what? That's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the owner of all things. He's the one that gives us the ability to sleep. He's the one that has the right for us to do whatever. So if He tells us to wake up in the time of Fajr to make the Salah, we say we listen and we obey. Not just willingly in the sense that we are forced to do it, no, with love, with perfect love to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course, if a person doesn't have the capacity, someone that is sick or something like that, we have the rulings for it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His religion is perfect. Same thing with zakah money, and so on and so forth. Right? So this is this level of submission, which is basically what Islam is all about, is to learn and to follow with submission, with love and devotion. And definitely all kinds of good things will happen to the person in this life and in the hereafter. Otherwise, we are, no matter what we do, we are in that state of submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And everybody will return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَإِلَى اللَّهِ الْمَصِيرُ. To Allah is al-Masir. The end is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So why then not to submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala willingly, since everything is in state of submission to Allah? We grow old, we might not, if it's up to us, we would want to stay young forever, but that's how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us. So we are in state of submission. So whatever is left is just in that matters of choices. So to perfect our submission, this is a goal in life. And one of the ways is as mentioned in this hadith. So min husn Islam is just a great value here to understand that we need to work on perfecting our Islam, our submission, our obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but it has to be based on haqq, based on the truth, based on the true knowledge. And that's why the importance of knowledge is so important, especially at times when there's so much confusion and so much information out there. Everybody can speak. And then for anyone that has some intellect, he would see clearly that not anyone that speaks about a matter, he's right about it. You know, as you see, everybody speaks now. Everybody has an opinion in any matter, right? But people, when they respect, you know, professionalism or whatever, you know, you won't find people, for example, on the social media talking about you know, this is what I think this medicine is best for you because it has a color, its color is green, or because I like the taste of it. Nobody would say these things. They would ask the people that are knowledgeable about the matter. But when it comes to matters of deen, everybody has an opinion. You know, and people, I heard this guy said this, and I heard this guy said that, without knowing who's these people, whether they're shayateen, you know, devils are on an image of human beings, spreading whatever they want. This deen is well structured, is saved, is clear. So there's no room for confusion, as many people are confused because they allow themselves to listen to whoever talks about matters of the deen. And the more the person gains knowledge and we see principles, and that's the criteria to know what is right and what is wrong, that it's not related to the individual speaking, it's basically taking us back to the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, to know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us, to know what the Prophet ﷺ said, authentic hadith, verses in the Quran, the clarity of matters of the deen, so that the person would make sure that he perfect his submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And since it's submission, that means we have to make sure that this is correct. Otherwise, you know, a person can submit himself to the wrong thing. So I talked so much about min husn Islam, but this is such an important thing. We need to be upon this and to have this level of submission to Allah. But one of the means, as the hadith says here, to do what then? If a person wants to perfect his submission to Allah and to perfect his religion, one of which is to do is tarkuhu ma la yani. Leave what does not concern you. Such a powerful statement. It's a way of life, and it can really, it's awakening to all of us if we really look at it with reflection, and we look into our lives and all the actions that we do, all the things that we say, all the different, you know, whether it's friends, work, whatever there is. Leave what does not concern you. And what does that mean? This has details to it. We have to know first, what are the things that concerns us, the things that are benefiting to us. You know, the most important thing, of course, is the deen of Islam. This is what concerns us. This is the purpose of our life, to fulfill the purpose of our life, to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. to enter Jannah. This is the ultimate goal. And everything else has to fall into that major goal, otherwise we're contradicting ourselves. And if it falls into this end goal and the most important one, everything will fall in place. So anything that does not concern us in the hereafter, leave it. What does that mean? Eating meat and chicken and so on, does that concern us in the hereafter? Of course it does, because we need to eat and drink. We need to be grateful to Allah. We need to be able to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by having food and drinks and so on. Relationships, why a person needs to get married, to fulfill the orders of Allah, to protect oneself from sins. That's a matter that, of course, of concern, and so on. So matters of deen, worldly matters that makes it easy for us to apply the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to enjoin good and forbid evil. Some people think it's not of your business, it's not of your concern to advise someone else. That's not the case, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered us to advise one another, to enjoin good, to forbid evil, to learn, to teach others. People have to have the concern towards one another. You know, as a family, the father is in charge. He will be asked about his family, his wife and children. The wife is responsible also. She will be asked in the Day of Judgment. And things like this. People in the community, in the masjid, they advise one another. They don't see a brother that used to come. You know, they need to see what happened to him. Maybe he needs help. Someone is upon sin, to approach him in the right way, in the easy way, in the lenient way, to advise the person. And a person should not say, well, it's not of your business, look at yourself first, because it's part of our deen. It's people, they are all together as if they are in one ship. So if those who are on the bottom, as the Prophet ﷺ gave the example of the people is like the people on a ship, some people on top roof and some people on the deck. And if the people on the deck down there, if they make a hole in their part to get water from underneath them, you know, they will cause the ship to sink. So the people on the top, if they leave them and they say, well, it's not our part, it's not our place, they're all going to sink. And they're all going to drown. But if the people on top, they would go down and stop them from doing what they're doing, all of them will be saved. So the same thing with this ummah of the Prophet ﷺ, the concern, the dua. So that's a concern, right? With ahkam, with the rulings, of course, not in a chaos way. Not anybody that wants to do something, he does it on his own way, or his way of upbringing, or foolishness and so on. No, based on the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And there are many things that does not concern us. Many things that we say, does it really concerns us to have an opinion over every single thing that happens on the face of earth? Politics is an example. You know, are we effective when we say our opinions to people? Do we really change anything in wasting, for example, our time and talking about things that has no benefit? It's different than being concerned about the Muslims and making dua and so on. You would find we're living at times where everybody has an opinion over all things. Social media and the like of this. This hadith is very relevant to our times today. Leave what is not concerns you so that we are busy with what concerns us. Life is very short. We can do so many good things in our life for ourselves, for others, instead of wasting our life in things that does not matter to us, does not concerns us. And for example, what happened, you know, why we look at our neighbors, for example, they get a new car. You know, what kind of car? When did they get the car? Oh, he changed his job. Does that something that concerns us? Is it something that is of any concern to us? You know, not looking too much into what people got, you know, what people purchased, and, you know, things like this. Listening to what people say that we have no rights to do that, and that's not permissible. So many different things. You know, it's something that makes the person focused and to put goals in our life and to go about it and to learn the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As you see here, you know, the Sheikh Al-Uthaymeen rahimahullah, one of the good things that he mentioned here, the benefits that a person should learn, that to know the goodness or matters of goodness in this deen of Islam is an important thing. And he refers to, there's a small book, it's a beautiful book, it's called Mahasin al-Din Islami, the good things about the deen of Islam. And this is something to be also discussed. He says, whoever leaves what does not concerns him, that's part of his goodness in his Islam. If you want to be a good Muslim, leave what does not matter to you, what does not concerns you. And leave it now maybe general, yes, but the details of that, this is what we need to have the knowledge of. Like we should not expect that we get the entire knowledge of what this hadith means today. Meaning tomorrow, for example, or today, you're faced by something. You've been dealing with, this, talking about in this group or that group for many, many years before or whatever. Now we get to know, you need to ask yourself a question. As a person of knowledge, is that something that is of concern to me? What's the most important thing for me now? Is it seeking the mandatory knowledge? Am I giving the Quran the rights of the Quran? Being busy with things that is not very important, but rather to learn the deen of Allah, to learn the Quran, to taking care of the families and so on. So, and as he says, sometimes you would find people talking about things that is of no concern to him, or asking about things that is no benefit. Like a person, for example, needs to learn his deen and aqidah and tawheed, and then you would find you're concerned about how much wealth Qarun had, the cousin of Musa alayhi salam, or how come the things that are irrelevant, things going into details of what is not mentioned, for example, in stories in the Quran. We should be more concerned of what's benefiting to us. And he mentioned the issue of enjoining good and forbidding the evil, and that's part of our concern, because we are one nation, and people would be affected by what they do and so on. So just to have that concern in our hearts, that it's part of perfecting our Islam, is to leave what does not concern us. How to go about this? We need to examine everything in our life, and to have the knowledge of it, to ask the people of knowledge, to focus and how is that related to the purpose of our life, and how can we stay away from the haram and to do the things that are permissible for us in the right way, and to leave many of the things that has no concern to us. When people do not do this, you'd find many disputes happens because people are indulging in things that is of no concern to them. And that's why, for example, backbiting is forbidden. People are just talking about each other. What is that concerns to us? Unless there's a reason why this is an exception to the backbitings and so on. And it's all based on knowledge and clean knowledge. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the proper understanding. There are many examples in this, but this is one of the beautiful hadith that gives us a way of life, and it's how it's related to one's religion, and how submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not just by making salah and so on and so forth, but rather also to have this in our life. من حسن إسلام, from the goodness of one's Islam, تركه ما لا يعني. بارك الله فيكم. جزاكم الله خيرا، وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.